Welcome to the Future of Us Bookcast, your gateway to insights shaping our future.
Today, we're looking at a really fascinating book. It challenges some pretty deep-seated ideas we have about mistakes, about setbacks. It's called Right Kind of Wrong, and the author is Amy C. Edmondson.
Yeah, and what jumped out at me straight away was her background. It's kind of unusual, right? Harvard professor, sure, but with experience in engineering and organizational behavior. Plus, she worked with Buckminster Fuller. That's quite a mix.
It really is, and I think that mix is exactly why she approaches this whole topic differently. Thinking about systems, how things connect, whether it's a bridge or a team.
So what's the core idea she's getting at in the book?
Basically, she's saying failure isn't just failure. It's not one big negative thing. There's actually a science to it, a science we can learn to master. The book gives us this taxonomy, a way to sort failures.
Sorting them out. Like good failures and bad failures.
Kind of, yeah. She calls it distinguishing the right kind of wrong, the failures we actually need for progress, from the ones that are, well, just preventable screw-ups.
Okay, so there are failures we should aim for. That sounds counterintuitive.
It does at first, but the mastery part isn't just about knowing the types. It's also about emotional strength. Because, let's face it, none of us likes to fail.
Right, that's the first hurdle, isn't it? Our aversion to it.
Absolutely. It's the biggest barrier. The book talks about how we instinctively shy away from admitting failure. We deny it, we make excuses, we blame someone or something else. It starts early, in childhood even.
And that blame game, it just shuts down any chance to actually learn from what went wrong.
Exactly. It's poison for learning.
Yeah.
And Edmondson connects this aversion to some really deep psychological stuff, like Daniel Kahneman's work on loss aversion.
Oh, yeah, the idea that losing $100 feels way worse than gaining $100 feels good.
Precisely. We're wired to feel losses more intensely. And failure feels like a loss of face, loss of progress, loss of confidence.
And it goes even deeper, doesn't it? Something about social pain.
Mm-hmm. There's research, she mentions, Lieberman and Eisenberger, I think, showing that social pain like shame, rejection, looking dumb in front of others, it actually lights up the same parts of the brain as physical pain.
Wow, so that fear of looking bad isn't just vanity. It's like a real primal fear.
Yeah, think about our ancestors. Getting kicked out of the tribe, that was a death sentence. So that fear of social rejection is baked in pretty deep. And today, even on a smaller scale, it stops us taking risks.
Risks that are necessary for growth, for trying something new, for hitting those stretch goals.
Exactly. So we need something to help us push past that ingrained fear. Which brings us to a great quote the book uses from Churchill.
Ah, yeah, I remember that one. Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm.
It's brilliant, isn't it? It accepts the stumbling part as normal, unavoidable. But the key bit is the enthusiasm. Holding on to that despite the setbacks, that's how you overcome the psychological barrier.
And this whole area, this resistance, is actually what led Edmondson to her big discovery, right? Psychological safety.
That's right. It came from research she was doing in hospitals. She had this hypothesis, a pretty logical one, that the best hospital teams, the highest performing ones, would have the lowest reported error rates.
Makes sense? Better teams, fewer mistakes.
Except that's not what she found. Her hypothesis failed. Spectacularly, actually. The data showed the opposite. The better teams seemed to have higher error rates.
Okay, that's weird. How did she explain that?
Well, she had to pause and really dig into it.
Mm-hmm.
And the aha moment was realizing it wasn't about making more mistakes. It was about reporting more mistakes. The better teams had this climate of openness.
Ah, so they felt safe enough to say, oops, I nearly gave the wrong drug, or we need to fix this process.
Exactly. They felt safe for interpersonal risk-taking, speaking up, admitting errors, asking questions. That's psychological safety. If you don't have that, people hide mistakes.
And then those mistakes just keep happening, hidden under the surface. Makes total sense.
So before we dive into her actual types of failure, she clarifies 3 terms we often mix up. First, the big one, failure. That's just any outcome that isn't what you wanted. Losing a game, a project failing, whatever.
Okay, broad category. What's next?
Errors or mistakes. These are more specific. They're unintended slip-ups when following a known processor standard, like, accidentally putting salt instead of sugar in a recipe.
Right, you knew the rule, you just messed up executing it. And the third...
Violations. These are different because they're intentional. Deliberately breaking a rule or procedure, like skipping a safety check on purpose to save time.
Got it. So, mistake is accidental, violation is deliberate. Important distinction for how you respond.
Hugely important. You don't respond to an accidental slip-up the same way you respond to someone deliberately cutting corners. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's get into Chapter 1. It's called Chasing the Right Kind of Wrong.
And this chapter is really about making the case for why we need to embrace certain kinds of failure, especially when we're pushing boundaries.
Right. It sets the stage by talking about environments with really high stakes, where the territory is completely new. And the example she uses is, well, it's pretty harrowing. Early open heart surgery.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can imagine that was fraught with failure.
Extremely. She tells the story of Dr. Clarence Dennis in 1951 trying to use one of the very first heart-lung bypass machines. It was uncharted territory. And the initial results were just tragic.
How bad was it?
The machine was incredibly complex, needed like 16 people to operate it, lots of room for error, both mechanical and human. The book mentions 2 children, Patty Anderson and Cheryl Judge, who died during these early attempts. One death involved a technician letting the blood reservoir run dry, pumping air into the child. Just devastating.
That's incredibly hard to read about. But her point is,
Her point is that these weren't failures due to carelessness in a known procedure. They were unavoidable failures that came from experimenting at the absolute edge of what was possible. In a totally novel context, Dennis's colleague, Lillehei, eventually succeeded, but only by learning from these awful outcomes. His biographer said the early days produced only corpses.
so those terrible failures were, in a grim way, necessary steps.
Necessary, painful data points. Without learning from them, like figuring out you need constant automated monitoring of blood oxygen, we wouldn't have the life-saving surgeries we have today. It shows that massive progress often requires risking massive failure.
Which ties into that Robert F. Kennedy quote the book uses.
Yeah, only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly.
It really frames innovation as inherently risky. If you want the big prize, you have to accept the potential for big falls.
You do. But even knowing that intellectually our instinct is still to blame someone when things go wrong.
Right, the blame reflex.
Yeah, Edmondson points out that managers, especially those in powerful positions, are statistically more likely to point fingers outward rather than look inward, and that blame dodging, as she calls it, just kills learning. You can't fix a problem if you refuse to diagnose it honestly.
It takes a different mindset, like the athletes she mentions.
Exactly. Athletes often have a healthier view, like Abby Wambach saying failure means you're in the game. You can't score if you don't take the shot right.
Which leads perfectly to maybe the most famous quote about this.
Like Gretzky one.
Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Classic. It's just a straight-up encouragement to act, to try, even knowing you might miss. Accept the possibility of failure to even have a shot at success.
And then when you do miss, how you frame it is crucial for bouncing back, like the Olympic medalist example.
Oh, that's fascinating. The counterfactual thinking. Silver medalists are often less happy than bronze medalists.
Because the silver medalist keeps thinking, almost got gold,
Yeah.
while the bronze medalist thinks, phew, at least I got a medal, could have been 4th.
Exactly. The silver medalist compares upward, the bronze compares downward, and that downward comparison feels better. It shows how much our interpretation matters.
It connects to how we explain setbacks to ourselves, doesn't it? Attribution theory.
Right. If you don't get a job, do you think the applicant pool was incredibly strong this year, which is external, specific, temporary? Or do you think I'm just not good enough, internal, pervasive, permanent?
That second one is crushing. The first one allows you to try again.
And that healthier attribution is key. That's quote 4, essentially. Attributing failure, not getting a job, to competitive applicant pools, external, specific, rather than I'm just not good enough, internal, pervasive AIDS recovery.
So resilience isn't about never falling. It's about having realistic, balanced ways of explaining why you fell. That's part of the science of failing well.
It is. It's the psychological toolkit. Okay, so now we need to apply this thinking to different situations. And that means understanding the context. This is where she sets up her main taxonomy. She divides contexts based on uncertainty.
Okay, what are the types?
First, consistent contexts. Think of baking standard cookies from a recipe you know well. The steps are clear, the knowledge is solid, the outcome is pretty much guaranteed if you follow the instructions. Failure here is usually avoidable. You just forgot an ingredient or something.
Got it. Low uncertainty. Predictable.
Then, variable contexts. Here you have expertise, but the situation can throw curveballs. An ER doctor knows medicine, but each patient brings unique symptoms. An experienced pilot knows how to fly, but they might hit unexpected weather. Knowledge exists, but you need to adapt.
So, more uncertainty, more potential for things to go sideways, even if you're skilled.
Right. And finally, novel contexts. This is brand new territory. No recipe, no map. Innovation lives here. Starting a totally new kind of business, doing groundbreaking scientific research, or like those early heart surgeons. Progress demands trying things that might not work. Failure isn't just possible, it's expected. It's how you gather data.
Okay, that's a really useful distinction. Consistent, variable, novel, because how you approach failure, and whether you should even call it a failure, depends entirely on what context you're in.
Precisely. Burning toast in a consistent context, that's just a basic error. Your experimental fusion-powered toaster exploding in a novel context. That's potentially valuable data.
Hopefully not too valuable. Okay, so that exploding toaster perfectly sets up Chapter 2, Eureka, Intelligent Failure. This is the right kind of wrong she talks about.
This is the good stuff, the failure you want, in a way. So an intelligent failure has specific characteristics. It has to happen in novel territory. It has to come from a thoughtful experiment. You had a hypothesis. You were trying to learn something specific. And crucially, it's not caused by carelessness or breaking basic rules.
So it's disappointing, sure, but it's not blameworthy. It's like, okay, that hypothesis was wrong. What did we learn?
Exactly. It's data. Expensive data sometimes, but data nonetheless. And the poster child for this mindset is Thomas Edison.
With the light bulb or the battery in this case.
Yeah, the battery. He famously didn't see his thousands of attempts as failure.
Right. Quote 5, I did not fail. I simply found 2,000 ways not to make a battery.
That quote perfectly captures the required cognitive reframing. It's not defeat, it's iteration. It's exploring the possibility space. But Edmondson emphasizes this isn't just about blind trial and error. It requires real preparation.
You need an informed prediction, she says, not just a wild guess.
Right. You need a smart hypothesis first. Like Jocelyn Bell Burnell discovering pulsars, she noticed these tiny weird squiggles in the radio telescope data.
Things that shouldn't have been there according to existing knowledge.
Exactly. Someone without her deep training might have just ignored it as noise. But because she was so well prepared, she recognized it as an anomaly, something that violated expectations. That failure of the data to match the expected pattern led to a huge discovery.
So intelligent failure needs smart people asking smart questions and running smart experiments. Often small ones, right?
Yes, smart pilots are key to testing ideas without betting the farm. But pilots can go wrong too, and not always in the way you'd expect. There's a great cautionary tale in the book about a pilot that failed by succeeding.
How does that work?
It was a big telecom company testing a new technology. The managers were so keen for this pilot to look good that they basically cheated. They gave the small pilot group tons of extra resources, extra staff, special treatment.
So it wasn't a realistic test of how it would work under normal conditions.
Not at all. So the pilot was a huge success on paper. Everyone celebrated. But because it was artificially propped up, it completely hid the real-world problems and weaknesses.
And when they launched it full scale?
Big, expensive, embarrassing failure. Because the pilot hadn't provided real data. It had failed the company by succeeding under false pretenses.
That's a subtle but really important point about designing experiments properly. You need honest results, even if they're disappointing.
Which is why the diagnosis afterwards is critical. You have to ask, was this just a dumb mistake? Or was it a genuinely thoughtful attempt that didn't pan out?
Leading to, quote, 6, the diagnostic question.
Yeah.
With the hypothesis thoughtful but wrong, then it's an intelligent failure.
That's the check. It stops us from labeling basic sloppiness as intelligent. And pursuing intelligent failure requires not just smarts, but also persistence, combined with knowing when to change course.
The pivot.
Yeah.
Like the Amy Webb online dating story, that was fascinating.
Was it? After a date literally walked out on her, she didn't just crawl under a rock. She treated it like an engineering problem.
She reframed personal rejection as, like, algorithmic failure. This is kind of brilliant.
Totally. She realized online dating was a novel context for her, requiring experimentation. So she ran one, created fake profiles, gathered data on what worked, reverse-engineered the attributes of successful profiles.
And tweaked her own profile based on that data, changing photos, wording, even timing her replies, waiting exactly 23 hours or something.
Yeah, super specific, data-driven adjustments, and it worked. She found her future husband. It wasn't luck, it was methodical, iterative learning from failure in a novel domain.
Which is summed up nicely in quote 7 about her approach. Her success was due to cracking the algorithmic code, but only because she was willing to learn from failure and persevere.
It shows that systematic approach can work even in really personal, messy areas, but that learning requires real honesty with yourself. The book has this table 2.2, I think, about bad learning habits.
Oh, yeah, like saying, I'll just try harder next time.
Right, which avoids asking why it failed. Or the self-serving bias taking all the credit for success, but blaming external factors for failure. You have to own your part, however small, to learn properly.
Okay, so that's intelligent failure, valuable, necessary for progress, requires smarts and honesty. Now we have to talk about the other end of the spectrum, the stuff we just want to avoid. Chapter 3. To err is human. Basic failure.
Right. This is the kind of failure that happens in known territory. There's a recipe, a standard, a checklist, and the failure is usually down to a single cause, often preventable with care and existing knowledge.
These are the facepalm moments, the ones that feel wasteful.
Totally wasteful. And sometimes the scale is just mind-boggling. The Citibank example, accidentally wiring $900 million instead of $8 million.
Yeah, that was insane. And it wasn't some complex hack, right? It was just someone didn't check the right boxes on the software.
Pretty much. A basic human error in executing a known process, leading to an almost billion-dollar mistake. That's a massive basic failure.
And sometimes these basic failures have tragic consequences, like the Air Florida crash she discusses.
That's a chilling example of basic failure in a variable context driven by habit. The pilots were used to flying in warm weather, so flicking the anti-ice switch to off during the checklist was automatic, routine.
But on that freezing day in D.C., they didn't consciously override the habit. They didn't stop and think, wait, conditions are different today?
Exactly. They failed to adapt a routine procedure to the specific variable conditions. That simple failure of attention, of overriding habit, led to ice buildup and the crash. A devastating basic failure.
So what are the common drivers here? Inattention seems key.
Inattention is huge. Like the Johnson & Johnson vaccine mix-up workers used ingredients from the wrong account. Also, neglect like the Hyatt Regency walkway collapse where warning signs about instability were ignored, or just faulty assumptions.
Faulty assumptions, like the Theranos investors, assuming someone else must have done the due diligence.
Right. Everyone assumes someone else checked, so no one actually checks. It's a cascade of assuming things are okay when a basic check would show they're not.
It feels like these things are almost inevitable, given human fallibility, which I guess is the point of the video. So, if we accept that humans will make mistakes, the goal isn't eliminating error entirely, because that's impossible. It's about managing it, right? Building systems to catch or prevent the avoidable ones.
Exactly. It shifts the focus to prevention and mitigation systems, like the Humble checklist. Dr. Peter Pronevost's ICU checklist is the famous example. Simple steps, rigorously followed, dramatically reduced infections.
But as the Air Florida example shows, checklists only work if people are actually paying attention, not just going through the motions.
True. Diligence matters. A more profound systemic approach is what Paul O'Neill did at Alcoa, making safety the absolute top priority.
That was amazing. He becomes CEO of this giant industrial company, and his first speech to Wall Street isn't about profits, it's about aiming for 0 worker injuries.
Yeah, investors were apparently baffled, but O'Neill knew that achieving 0 injuries in a dangerous environment like aluminum manufacturing required incredible discipline, attention to detail, process excellence, communication, basically eliminating basic failures across the board.
And the side effect was?
Huge improvements in efficiency, quality, and ultimately profits and stock price. Focusing relentlessly on eliminating basic safety failures created a habit of excellence that permeated the whole company. It showed tackling basic failure can have massive socioeconomic benefits.
His commitment comes through in, quote, 9. I intend to make Alcoa the safest company in America. I intend to go for 0 injuries.
It was a radical stance, but it worked because it forced systemic rigor. And crucially, it required psychological safety workers had to feel safe stopping the line or reporting hazards without fear.
Another system the book highlights for catching errors is from Toyota, right? The andon cord.
Yeah, Jidoka automation with a human touch. Any worker can pull a cord to stop the entire assembly line if they see a problem.
Instead of letting a defect pass down the line and become a bigger problem later.
Exactly. It prevents small errors from compounding. And importantly, if it's a false alarm, it's treated as a learning moment, not a punishable offense. That encourages vigilance.
So all this reinforces the need to distinguish. Not all failure is good. The fail fast, fail often mantra can be dangerous if applied carelessly.
That's the warning in quote 10. The failure craze, the fail fast, fail often culture that wants us to embrace failure, seemingly indiscriminately, risks glossing over the vast and varied failure landscape, which also includes basic and complex failure.
Right. Basic failures are just waste. We should eliminate them through good design, checklists, vigilance. We should only be celebrating the intelligent failures that teach us something new.
Okay, so we have intelligent failures, good in novel contexts, and basic failures, bad in known contexts. What's left? The messy middle, Chapter 4. The perfect storm, complex failure in systems.
Yeah, these are the ones where it feels like everything went wrong at once. Not just one mistake, but a whole chain reaction.
Exactly. Complex failure is always multi-causal. It's usually several small factors, some internal, some external, maybe some bad luck colliding in a familiar-ish setting. But the combination creates an outcome way worse than any single factor would suggest.
Like the Torrey Canyon oil spill example.
Perfect example. You had the captain pushing the limits to save time. Then add a fog. Then unexpected fishing boats appear. Then a slight delay in the ship's old steering gear. Any one of those things. May be manageable. Altogether, disaster. Britain's biggest oil spill.
And then the cleanup efforts made it even worse, trying to bomb the wreck.
Right. The cure worse than the malady. It shows how complex systems can have unintended consequences pile up. Another example, more recent and tragic, is the Rust film set shooting.
That wasn't just one person's fault either, was it?
No, the investigations pointed to multiple system breakdowns. Live ammunition shouldn't have been on set, period. Procedures for checking rounds were apparently inadequate or not followed. There were reports of previous accidental discharges that hadn't been properly addressed. A whole series of lapses.
So if any single one of those smaller failures had been caught or prevented, the tragedy might not have happened.
That's the key insight, captured in, quote, 11. If any one of the smaller errors had been caught or avoided, the tragic failure could have been averted.
And the significance there is huge. Blaming one single person in a complex failure is almost always wrong and counterproductive. It masks the systemic issues that need fixing.
It really does. And understanding these systemic issues brings us to Charles Perrow's work on normal accidents theory.
Right, the idea that in some systems, accidents are basically inevitable over the long run.
Kind of. Perrow looked at systems based on two factors: how complex they are, lots of interconnected parts, hard to understand interactions, and how tightly coupled they are. No slack. One part fails, and it immediately affects others with no time to recover.
Like a nuclear power plant, maybe. Very complex, very tightly coupled. A small glitch can cascade instantly.
Exactly. In those kinds of systems, Perrow argued, accidents are normal, not frequent maybe, but an inherent property of the system itself. You can reduce the risk, but you can't eliminate it entirely because of that complexity and tight coupling.
But the book contrasts this with healthcare.
Yeah, hospitals are definitely complex, but patient care is often loosely coupled. There are handoffs between shifts, pauses where information is exchanged. There's some slack, some opportunity to catch an error before it causes harm.
So, because of that loose coupling, maybe zero harm is achievable in healthcare, unlike in a nuclear plant.
That's the argument Edmondson makes. It's a different type of system architecture, which brings us to probably the biggest modern example of complex failure: the Boeing 737 MX.
Oh boy, that had everything, didn't it? Engineering, corporate culture, regulations.
It was a perfect storm unfolding over years. You had the engineering issue with the MCS software, yes, but that was layered onto intense competitive pressure from Airbus. You had reportedly finance-focused executives overruling engineering concerns, a deliberate strategy to minimize the perceived changes to avoid expensive pilot retraining.
And a culture where engineers maybe didn't feel safe speaking up forcefully enough. Low psychological safety again.
Critically important. The book cites emails and reports suggesting engineers felt pressured to stay quiet, that dissent wasn't welcome, that lack of safety allowed the risks to go unaddressed.
Quote, 12 really hits this point from a Boeing engineer. There is a suppressive cultural attitude towards criticism of corporate policy, especially if that criticism comes as a result of fatal accidents.
Chilling. It shows how culture isn't just a soft issue. It's a critical component of safety and performance in complex technical systems. The system failed partly because the culture failed.
So given these complexities, how do we even begin to reduce complex failures?
Two key strategies the book emphasizes. First, get better at noticing ambiguous threats. We often miss early warning signs because of confirmation bias. We see what we expect, or we downplay things that don't fit, like the Space Shuttle Columbia foam strike.
Right. Engineer Rodney Rocha saw the impact on the grainy footage, but it was dismissed because foam strikes had happened before without causing disaster. They normalize the deviance.
Exactly. They didn't treat the ambiguous signal with enough seriousness. Second, we need to actively use the recovery window. That's the time between detecting a potential problem and the actual failure happening.
And NASA lost that window with Columbia by not getting satellite images of the wing damage when they could have.
They did. A system designed to catch these things early is the Rapid Response Team, RRT, in hospitals. They're designed to detect the smoke, subtle signs a patient is declining before it becomes a full fire, a code blue cardiac arrest.
So they intervene earlier based on weaker signals.
Right, and here's the crucial culture part. If a nurse calls an ROT and it turns out the patient is fine, a false alarm, it's treated as a good thing.
Why? Seems like a waste of time.
Because it means the system is working. It means the nurse felt safe enough to raise a concern, the team responded, and everyone practiced their skills. Celebrating false alarms reinforces vigilance and speaking up, making the system safer overall. It actively fights the normalization of deviance.
Okay, that reframing of false alarms is really powerful. So we've covered the 3 types of failure. What else does the book explore? It moves into mindset, right?
Yeah, the later parts shift focus to the internal work, the awareness we need. Starting with self-awareness and the need to choose learning over knowing.
Learning over knowing, meaning being willing to admit you might be wrong.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
We all have this default setting, this automatic sense that I'm right. It takes real humility to question that. Ray Dalio's story is a great illustration here.
From the billionaire investor, what happened?
Back in 1982, he was absolutely convinced the U.S. economy was about to tank, bet everything on it, publicly, boldly.
Yeah.
And he was spectacularly wrong. The market soared. He lost nearly everything. He called that massive public failure a gift, though.
A gift?
Because it was so huge and undeniable, he had to confront his own fallibility. It forced him to shift from confidently knowing he was right to humbly focusing on what he needed to learn. He built his whole company, Bridgewater, around principles of radical transparency and learning from mistakes after that.
That ability to choose your response, even to something devastating, is key. Like the Viktor Frankl quote.
Yes, quote 13. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
The freedom isn't from avoiding bad things. It's in how you mentally engage with them, challenging those automatic negative thoughts, choosing a learning response.
Exactly. And that ties directly into the power of reframing, which brings in Carol Dweck's work on mindsets.
Fix versus growth. Classic.
Yep. Fixed mindset. Intelligence is fixed. Avoid challenges. Fear failure because it reflects badly on you. Growth mindset. Abilities can be developed. Embrace challenges. See failure as an opportunity to learn and get stronger. Guess which one is better for dealing with setbacks?
Clearly the growth mindset. It fuels persistence.
It does. And another crucial reframe is around shame. Brené Brown talks about this. Shifting from I am a failure, which connects the outcome to your core identity, to I failed at this task, or I failed to get that promotion.
Separating the event from the self makes
Yeah.
it less devastating, easier to move on from.
Absolutely. And this mindset helps distinguish useful persistence from just stubbornness. Knowing when to pivot. Sarah Blakely persisted with Spanx through countless rejections. That was good persistence.
But sometimes researchers cling to a failed hypothesis too long because of ego, right?
Yeah.
That's bad stubbornness.
Exactly. Failing well includes knowing when the data says this isn't working, time to stop or change direction. That requires intellectual honesty.
Okay, so self-awareness, growth mindset, reframing. What about looking outward? System awareness.
Right. We don't operate in a vacuum. We're part of systems. And a system isn't just a pile of parts. It's how the parts relate to each other that creates the whole. Like carbon atoms, same atoms, different structure gives you soft graphite or hard diamond.
So the relationships and structure are key. How does this relate to failure?
Well, sometimes our attempts to fix problems locally actually make the whole system worse over time. The book calls this the fix that fails.
Give me an example.
Think about nurses in a poorly organized hospital constantly running around, scrambling to find missing supplies for their patients. They make heroic efforts, solve the immediate problem for their patient. That's first-order problem solving.
Okay, they got the job done. What's wrong with that?
It feels good, like being a hero, but because they found a workaround, it reduces the pressure and motivation to fix the underlying systemic problem, the disorganized supply chain. That's second-order problem solving. So the constant workarounds actually prevent the system from getting fundamentally better, leading to burnout and recurring issues.
Ah, I see. The short-term fix undermines the long-term solution.
Exactly. So system awareness means thinking about those deeper structures. And system design isn't just about preventing bad failures. It's also about encouraging the right kind.
Which brings us to Quote 14. System design is not just for preventing failures. Equally important is the opportunity to design systems thoughtfully to achieve particular goals, like fostering innovation.
Precisely. Like 3M's legendary 15% time rule, letting engineers spend company time on their own crazy projects. That system was explicitly designed to encourage experimentation and tolerate intelligent failure. And we got Post-it notes out of it.
So you can design systems that make intelligent failure more likely, and that's a good thing in innovative contexts.
A very good thing.
Yeah.
Astro Teller at Google's X incubator takes this seriously. He said that if they had to do layoffs, the first people they might let go are the ones who never failed.
Wow, that sends a powerful message. If you're not failing sometimes, you're probably not taking enough risks, not pushing the envelope hard enough for that kind of moonshot work.
Exactly. It signals that intelligent failure is not just tolerated, but expected as part of high performance in a novel context.
Okay, this has been a really rich exploration. Let's try to boil down the key takeaways from Right Kinda Wrong.
So the big picture is, failure isn't simple. We have to move past seeing it as just one bad thing. The book gives us a way to analyze it, to understand the different types.
Right. There's intelligent failure, basic failure, and complex failure. And mastering the science means learning to distinguish them and respond appropriately. Plus, developing that psychological strength, the humility, the growth mindset, the reframing skills.
Absolutely. So maybe some key takeaways for listeners.
Yeah, let's list them out. First, maybe the most fundamental thing, discern the context. Are you in a consistent, variable, or novel situation? That tells you what kind of failure to expect and whether your goal should be vigilance or experimentation.
Good one. Second, intelligent failures are data. Treat them that way. They should ideally be small, based on a clear hypothesis, and analyzed rigorously to learn and move forward. They're the engine of discovery.
Third, basic failures are waste. They happen in known territory and are usually preventable. Fight them with attention, better assumptions, and systems like checklists, and-on chords, and strong safety cultures like O'Neill built at Alcoa.
Fourth, complex failures are systemic. They have multiple causes. Reducing them means designing systems to catch weak signals early, like RRTs, and using those recovery windows effectively. And, importantly, resist the urge to blame a single person. Look for the system flaws. Celebrating false alarms can actually help here.
Fifth, and maybe underpinning everything, psychological safety is the bedrock. Leaders have to intentionally create spaces where people feel safe speaking up, admitting mistakes, challenging the status quo without fear of humiliation or punishment. Otherwise, none of this learning can happen.
And finally, maybe sixth, choose learning over knowing. Actively practice humility. Pause before reacting defensively to setbacks. Challenge your own assumptions and automatic negative thoughts. Reframe failures as learning opportunities. That's how you build resilience and keep growing.
Excellent summary. It really provides a practical toolkit for navigating the inevitable challenges of work and life.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Us Bookcast. We hope you found inspiration in these ideas. Don't forget to subscribe and share together. We're co-creating the world of tomorrow.